Good News Make a Live program for this year. We conclude at 10 o'clock this evening with the clip that peaked. And normally in an evening like this one will be light, having some light moments, entertainment and so on. But believe me, times have changed. Even in the month of December, we have some critical issues to discuss in St. Lucia. In days of yore, I'll be focusing on the ushering of the festive season, looking at National Day events and so on. But we have developed to the extent, and developed in a bad way sometimes, to the extent we have to focus on issues relating to crime, issues relating to the economy. And just today you heard of the blacklisting of St. Lucia as a tax haven. So it is against that background that we have to go very much in depth, even on the final program for this year, 2017. My guest this evening is Mr. Guy Joseph, Minister with responsibility for economic development, housing, urban renewal, transport, and civil aviation. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Tim, and good night to all listeners and viewers.
How are you coping with so many portfolios? Economic development, housing, urban renewal, transport, and civil aviation. Those are all important portfolios. Along the way, do you run the risk of ignoring one or two?
There's always the risk that in terms of what you are required to do, that some things will take priority over others. You have to balance that against the backdrop of representing a constituency and having a family at the same time. And to strike the right balance is sometimes very demanding. What makes the difference is when you have strong permanent secretaries and departments that are functional, that can carry out the bulk of the work with minimal input from the minister. That makes it a lot lighter in the process, and the ability to be able to meet all of the requirements that one would have to meet.
Because one gets the impression that over the last, let's say, 18 months you've been a minister, that you've been focusing on economic development, and I think to a certain extent housing.
Yes.
How about transport and civil aviation? I know at one time you were the head of the National Council on Public Transportation.
Yes.
And we had a few challenges which today continue to impact us. What about the transport sector? What kind of meaningful changes are you hoping to make in the transport sector?
I have had a few meetings with the president of the National Council, some of his executive members. I've met with a couple of associations where there were issues that needed to be resolved. I think we've reached the stage where we need to take the public transport sector to the next level in St. Lucia. Our economy has changed considerably from agricultural based to service based, and I think one of the biggest challenges that is stifling the development is the transport, the availability of public transport at critical hours. And all of the issues that confront the operators are there. We have been working to work towards the cashless system. That is meeting some challenges in terms of the initial providers of the service. But I think once we can graduate into the cashless system, that we are going to see some major changes, because the risk of being held up and being robbed of the cash, that would be something of the past. Secondly, in my discussions with the president of the National Council, I indicated that we need to look at whether we are going to create a secondary transport system to facilitate the needs for the sector, especially past a certain hour. So we would request from the existing associations the times of operation. And when they have cut off the operation based on the hours that they have prescribed that they are working, then we can create a secondary system that would meet that shortfall during these time periods. I mean, as I've said to people, you don't need Uber to come into St. Lucia to have a reliable transport system. With the number of vehicles that we have on the island presently, I believe that more persons are seeing the need to own a vehicle because of the challenges faced by the public transport sector, the issue of reliability, timeliness, quality of service, and all of these things. And these are areas that both the president and myself in discussions that we have focused on. A couple of the things that we said, that the associations themselves need to get involved in the public transport sector in the manner where we can provide a round the island service, but that is run by the associations. So to have specific buses leave Castries at a certain point, they would stop in Ancillary if it's for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, Canaries, then Soufrière. Then you can jump onto another bus from Soufrière, you get to Choiseul, Labrie, and then Vieux-Fort, and then you can take another bus, but that is run by the associations themselves, to test out how that service is going to work out. There are still a lot of challenges with some of the minibus operators themselves understanding the importance of the service that they provide, and these are areas of focus. We need, in order to regulate the amount of vehicles that people see the need to buy, an improvement in the public transport system would be necessary.
What if Uber decides to offer its services in St. Lucia? Would the government try to prevent it from operating, or can it in the first place?
Well, our legislation, and I don't know how that will stand the scrutiny of WTO and the other organizations, but our legislation as it stands now reserves the public transport sector towards locals, people who are St. Lucians by citizenship or by birth. So when we designed the legislation at the time, I was part of the National Council and on the Road Transport Board. It was designed in a manner that this is a sector that is protected for the local people. So as to how that is going to mesh into, we have a lot of legal challenges that people are going to challenge on the basis that it is not fair trade practices that. So I think until it is tested, we wouldn't know exactly what the outcome would be. But clearly, people are moving in this direction, and that is why I feel we need to regulate it before it goes out of control. Because what is happening now, with the number of the smaller 7-seater buses and 8-seater like the LFAD and the NOAAs that are coming in on the route, some of these people are now offering services on some of what we call the off-route areas. So they are coming in at certain hours, for example in the night when service is no longer available, and they are beginning to fill in that void. And what I've said to the Minibus Association, anytime a void is created, somebody is going to fill it in. And if it is not regulated, then what you can have is a secondary system that comes into effect on its own without having the regulations, and then you have to grandfather everybody into that system. Whereas if you already see the problem, the best thing to do is to deal with it, and to deal with it in a structured way so that you have a proper functioning system.
So do you think that blame should be apportioned to the governments of St. Lucia for the dysfunctional state of the public transportation system? Because you all have been talking for a very long time. You have been transport minister even before this particular stint, and we've had other transport ministers in the previous St. Lucia Labour Party administrations all lamenting the poor state of the transportation sector. What is preventing you all from effecting those changes?
I think we've made major improvements, Tim, compared to where the public transport system was, and we may have lost some grounds recently in terms of some of the standards that was within the public transport sector, because whenever the politics gets involved in regulations, then it affects how people regulate because of the negative political impact. But transport is too important for it to be dealt with from only a political perspective and not what the needs of the country would be. So if you look at the quality of service provided by the taxi sector, I say that our minibuses, and I've been to most of the islands in the Caribbean, we have a good transport system in St. Lucia. I mean, when you look at a 14-seater bus here, if you put 15 people, then one of the 14 who was on the bus will get down for you. I go to St. Vincent and the other countries, and then these buses hold 20 people, 25 people. So in St. Lucia, our minibus system is like a taxi service in and of itself. Nobody wants to use the bus stop. Everybody wants to stop at the location that they are going. Even when the bus pulls up at the bus stop, they would not get off there, even if their house is in between that bus stop and the other bus stop. So we have challenges in this area, but I think that these are challenges that can be overcome. I think both governments have contributed to the lack of proper structure within the public transport system. But this is something that the minibus drivers must take a certain measure of responsibility, because it's very few places in the world that you have a public transport system that is privately owned. And because it is privately owned, you do not want to over-regulate what the bus drivers would do. But at the same time, they must see it purely as a business and must do whatever is required on their part to improve their business and to protect their livelihood in the process.
There's no denying that ever so often the minibus sector would be clamoring and calling for increase in bus fares. Have we reached a stage for an increase in bus fares?
What we did was, with the adjustment in the fuel prices, we regulated that the bus fare would not, the price of fuel would not go past $12.75. So on the last increase, if we had maintained the $1.50 that the government put on for the road maintenance part of it, it means that the price would have gone above the $12.75. So what we did was we had to take a cutback on the amount that of revenue that the government is collecting in order to regulate the bus fare to the point that it remains as is. I've had discussions with the association. A review is long overdue in terms of the bus fares, because during the negotiations with not the previous UWP government but the previous SLP government, not prior to 2006, where the arrangement was that every 3 years there would be a review. A review did not mean that there's going to be an increase in bus fares. So if you take the 4B, where the bus drivers were contemplating some protest action at some point in time. Since the previous bus fare increase, there were some mistakes in what was legislated, and that matter had never been corrected, so that the bus drivers were at a disadvantage. What I have been able to do since I came in was to make the proper adjustments to the bus fares in that area. We have prepared the SI that has gone through the AG's office, so now these bus fares are being legislated, and while it is changing in some areas, it's not an increase in bus fare that has been granted in that case, but it's an adjustment to put them on par with where they should have been 5 or 7 years ago.
Let's look at you personally as a politician and government minister. What do you think of your image in the eyes of the St. Lucian public?
I think my image is very mixed in the eyes. Those who like me, and those who do not like me as much as those who like me. So it's a mixed bag as far as that is concerned.
To what do you attribute that?
The attacks by the Labour Party especially. You know, the Labour Party has a special method of operations. And anybody who studies what they do will understand that they target the people who they think can do the most damage to them in the process, in the political arena, and they go after you to destroy you. So you take Dr. Vaughan Lewis as an example. When he became leader of the United Workers' Party, they went all out after him until they got him to come into submission, and now he's part of the Labour Party. You look at a number of candidates like Lorne and the others who are vehemently opposed by the Labour Party, even when he was contemplating running for the United Workers' Party. Then what happened? He became a candidate for the Labour Party. You go down the line, you take Richard Frederick as an example. All of the things they went after him, all of the things they did. Today he's the biggest spokesman. He has even been on the platform. The difference with me, Tim, is that the Labour Party has gone after me in every way you can imagine. And there are things that people don't know that they have tried to do. I'm aware of it. People come to me and people tell me, look here, we've been offered money to say things about you. Everybody who have been affiliated to me one way or the other. The Labour Party has not been able to beat me into submission. And I think that is what infuriates them the most about me. And so they go on a smear campaign. I can tell you, Tim, everything I have done, there's no politician in St. Lucia who has come under greater scrutiny than I have been. From my phone records to my emails, everything that I have done. I mean, the government of the Labour Party in 2012 hired one of the most renowned forensic auditors in the world, not in the Caribbean, you know, in the world, by the name of Bob Linguist or Robert Linguist.
That would have been the result of the various allegations that were swirling around you with regard to certain maneuverings, contracts, allegations that involve misappropriation of funds and so on. But why do you think that we have not gotten to the bottom of this particular issue to clear the air from the perspective of sufficient investigation and probing? And why haven't you? I don't think you have been forceful enough in clearing your name with regard to those issues.
No, because, Tim, I cannot clear my name. Because I will only say what it is, and people will not believe. It is not possible for that particular individual to clear his name.
Why?
If you do something...
Can you even clear your name in the courts?
But you can clear your name in the courts, but on what basis? Because where is what you can deal with in terms of the court? So let's take what has happened. A commission of inquiry is carried out. It comes with certain conclusions. A forensic audit is done. The conclusions come out. Why in my case that none of the records for the forensic audit that was done on me can be found? Where is that report? I've been asking. Over $3 million was paid from the Treasury. All the receipts were deleted from SmartStream. But I was able to get the copies of the receipts before they were deleted from SmartStream. I have every copy of every receipt that was paid to Robert Linguist. When I went, and anybody listening to the show tonight can go and Google Robert Linguist and find out that he has been a fraud investigator for some of the biggest scams in the world. You're talking about at the World Bank level, at the National Hockey League level in Canada and the US. I mean, this man was being paid in excess of almost $500 US an hour, and his two associates, and every single record that could be found on me. I mean, when I saw one of the documents and the best CV I ever saw about myself, I saw on that report, I said to my wife, that is the best CV. I need to get a copy of that CV that was written. Everything I had done long before I came into politics, every business that I had been involved in prior to coming into politics, is in this document. So it's not a document that was limited to my political life. Every call that I made, it's there. Every email that I sent is there. And yet still, they came up with nothing, Tim. So what can I do to clear myself? All the accusations, think of it. They took Sir John Compton and Dr. Von Lewis to court for a drain that is still there in Shantytown. Present Prime Minister Alan Chastanet and Minister Ezekiel Joseph were taken to court, one on the Babono Community Development Project and the other one on the project in the lighting of the field in Soufrière and the Third World Bank. You think it's by accident that the Labour Party has not even been able to get a bogus case on me? Don't you think they would have loved to find something? And I don't attribute that to myself, Tim, or to me being better than other people. I tell people I'm a praying person. I don't come and boast about my Christianity and my religion and these things, but I know what I stand for as a person. And it's only God who has been watching me that I have never found myself in a situation where they could have an ounce or an inch over me. I have worked in the ministry. I worked for 5 years in the Ministry of Infrastructure. They investigated every single project. CDP. They investigated the works after Hurricane Thomas. They investigated the Huronora International Airport, the asphalt and mining projects, every single one. And 5 years of Labour Party in office going after me. And they did not find anything. I don't know what I have to do to show St. Lucians. There's a price to being honest, you know, Tim. And sometimes the price to honesty is more than a lot of people are willing to pay.
But the investigation is very much still on?
I would love to know.
But do you know whether the investigation is on or not?
When I came in, no. There's no investigation going on, Tim, other than the Robert Linguist investigation. When I came into office, I had discussions with the Attorney General, and I said, if there's any investigation going on me, please don't stop it. I want it to continue. The reason why I want it to continue is because it gives me a chance to clear my name. Not me personally, but the persons who have decided to go into this direction. Now today you hear, Dr. Anthony, as the former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, what questions has he answered on Grindberg, on Rochamel, on issues like St. Jude, on the Southwest Coast Road, all of the projects under his watch that cost millions and millions of dollars, but more than it should.
But Mr. Joseph, if you do not clear your name, if you do not take the correct steps to clear your name, don't you think that impression could be given that on the basis of your silence that you're guilty in the eyes of the St. Lucians who want answers and who are maybe in a very confused state?
I don't think that people are confused, Tim. I think that people believe what they want to believe, even in the face of the evidence. Because the Labour Party said that I would go to jail during the campaign once they got in. You remember what they said about Richard Frederick? They said the FBI. They said the U.S. Marshals are waiting. As soon as the election is over, they would come for him. Richard Frederick is still there. He's a spokesman for them now, but he is still there. So today, everybody believes that what Richard Frederick says is true. But all the time that he was opposed to Labour, who was opposed to him more? I can tell you, Tim, what has to happen to clear my name will never happen. If I decide to align myself to the Labour Party tomorrow, I become a saint. I become the best person there is in St. Lucia. But I will go down and I will go up. That will not happen. Dr. Kenny Anthony and the Labour Party can never beat Guy Joseph into submission. I would rather die tonight than for that to happen. Because at the end of the day, you have to stand for something in your life. And for people, I mean, they accused me. They said I had farm in Canada. They were 5 years in government. They had a high commissioner in Canada. They didn't have a chance to check if I had a farm in Canada, that if land was registered on some family of mine. All of the things they said. I do my returns for the Integrity Commission every year. They gave me a hard time for 5 years. Every time I send my documents in, it was rejected. One time they said I didn't...
Rejected on what basis?
It was rejected. They need additional information. Submit all the information. I said, but I've been giving you all of the information. One time they said you didn't do tax returns for 3 years. So we need these tax returns. I went and I got the stamp copies because I always keep my records. So I got the stamp copies and I said, who stamped these documents? Who stamped this? Whose stamp and signature is on there? So I know several attempts have been made to frame me. They have gone after me in every way they can. I cannot claim I didn't. Only the records. So they can check my bank accounts. They have access. They had access for 5 years to the banks and to the information that's there. Robert Linguist checked everywhere in the US to find out where I had offshore accounts. These things cannot be hidden anymore. If there was anything, they would have found it. A man of his quality would have found it. I saw preliminary parts of the report. And you know the biggest accusation on me, Tim? You know what they call political interference and pressure? When I came on your show, when I made a news release to say where we were on the airport. That is what is in the report as political pressure. What I said in the public domain, that we are at an advanced stage, that this is where the project is at. So that is all linguists could have interpreted as political pressure. But I would love to meet this man, you know. I would love to meet the Robert Linguist. And because I don't know what report he submitted, I have the cabinet conclusion where the decision was made by, and the two persons in charge of that was Dr. Kenny Anthony and the Attorney General. They were the two responsible for that. If Dr. Anthony can stand half the scrutiny that I have stood in politics, I can leave politics now.
But if it turns out, for whatever reason, that dirt is found on you, would you face the consequences?
Of course. I would not even have a choice. I don't have a choice in the matter. But am I worried? Not at all. How can you be worried about what is not there? So I don't know what I did. I don't know who I am as a person. I don't know if I did things in government that I have to worry about. I never have a problem falling asleep, you know, Tim. When I go to my home, I don't worry about anything. I don't walk and have to look over my shoulder over what happens. I'm not worried about what they could find in the ministry.
You're watching Newsmaker Live, the final broadcast for 2017. My guest this evening is Sir Guy Joseph, the Minister for Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. And later, your calls. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Once again, you're watching Newsmaker Live on DBS Television, the final program for this year. And my guest this evening, Mr. Guy Joseph, Economic Development Minister, St. Jude Hospital. Make some definitive statements on St. Jude. What will happen to that health institution, which has been in the news for a very long time now?
It is difficult to make definitive statements on St. Jude at this point in time. The definitive statements that I can make is that we are going to have a hospital in the south. The hospital can be called St. Jude because the intention is to make it St. Jude Hospital. And contrary to what everybody is saying that, you know, we came in and we just stopped the work, something had to be done and to be done right, team. And yesterday in the parliament, during the break, I was having a discussion with one of the reps from the Vieux Fort Basin. And I was telling him, he told me, but you need to finish St. Jude because you all stopped the work. I said, but you all didn't finish St. Jude. His response to me was, we were working every day. I said, you all were working every day, but doing what? So based on Dr. Anthony's statement about St. Jude, that $60 million would have given us a state-of-the-art hospital. If we've spent over $100 million and the hospital is about 50% complete, what does that tell us? They were working every day to mash up the hospital, not to build the hospital. So people can be working every day, but it is what they are doing. Now, Tim, one of the things that I want people to understand, you cannot build a hospital without a plan. Okay? And I have said, and that's why I told you, it is difficult for people like me to clear my name. In the face of all the evidence, people choose to believe otherwise. So it's as simple as that. We said there were no approved plans for St. Jude. It is that easy for anybody to go to the Development Control Authority and find out if there was a plan. The plan that came in for St. Jude was submitted in 2016. And what was submitted could not be approved by the DCA. So I have what we call as-built drawings, team. This is an as-built drawing. We had to get the architect to go in there and to draw the entire hospital as it is. Measure every wall. Measure every floor space and come and build and give us a drawing. You now have to submit that drawing to the DCA. And whatever reconfiguration that you are doing of the existing building, then you have to draw these plans now to show the changes. As late as Friday morning, I met with a gentleman by the name of Joe Vega, who is a biomedical engineer with one of the companies supplying equipment for the hospital. And Tim, I showed that letter on the news during the week. This is a letter written by Mr. Mandish Singh on the 13th of January 2016. And the normal greetings, and then he says, following discussions with the project management unit, the aim is to complete the building of the hospital by August 2016, after which testing and commissioning will commence. We are very optimistic that the date is achievable based on the progress of works to date and the projected work to be executed in the next 2 quarters. So that is the letter. That is one of the last documents on St. Jude. Now, I tell everybody, I'm a simple man. This letter says that the hospital would have been completed in August of 2016. I can tell you, past October 2016, work was still going on at St. Jude. Why didn't the hospital finish? Why is the hospital so far from being completed? When I met with Mr. Vega, who's a biomedical engineer, and he started explaining to me the problems that they were having with the hospital. And I can challenge anybody on this. The equipment, they gave the specifications of the equipment for the hospital and where the equipment had to fit. And when they came in to measure the place where the equipment was going, the roof was too low, or the flooring was too low because it's in the basement. His first advice to them is highly technical equipment. You do not put it in the basement because any water or anything will spoil this equipment. They said no, they insisted that this is where the equipment was going. You know what they had to do? Dig the foundation of the building, take off the foundation and sink the building, the flooring, a couple feet deep. So it's below the level. You put in the highest tech equipment, that is the most expensive equipment in the hospital down there, in what can be a swimming pool. He told me they had the same problem in St. Vincent. They advised the government in St. Vincent not to put the equipment in the basement. They did not heed the advice. 6 months after the equipment was placed there was the flooding in St. Vincent. The equipment got spoiled.
Now let's looking back. Let's go forward.
So
what is happening with St. Jude, and how soon will that hospital be opened and available to the people in the south of the island?
The question that people want the answer for, the answer is not available. Now that is the truth that people don't want to deal with, because they accepted for the last 4 years, every year would be the last year. Every December would be the last December. Every January would be the next time we're going into the hospital. Now people don't like the truth. The truth is a politician can come here and they can give you a date, and then 6 months when it doesn't happen, they can come and give you a dozen excuses as to why it did not happen, and they'll give you another projected date. And that is what happened on every occasion in St. Jude.
Now, again,
where we are, so let me answer you, Tim. Where we are, we cannot give a date for the completion of St. Jude. If I wish I could have finished.
How soon will work commence on the hospital?
You cannot commence work without the proper plan. So these as-built drawings, apart from being reviewed locally, we have sent to 2 engineering firms that deal with hospital construction to see what reconfigurations they can give us of this building. So we have not abandoned the St. Jude site. We have not abandoned the possibility of completing that hospital. I will tell you, if the Labour Party had not changed the plans for St. Jude and had gone ahead and just repaired the hospital as it was started under the Stevenson King administration, that hospital would have been opened a long time ago.
So can we envisage the hospital opening sometime in 2018?
I am not...
Or even later?
I am not giving you a date, Tim, because when I come back here, everybody will hold me. How can I, without the requisite information, come and give? I don't even know what the final drawings are going to be like for St. Jude.
So work has stopped in the hospital and we don't know when it will commence?
I don't know when the work is going to commence. I am hoping that I can commence the work very early in the new year. As I speak to you here, Tim, on Saturday, a team from Apollo Health is coming to St. Lucia. They are arriving here on Saturday. We are meeting with them on Sunday morning. Some of the engineers are in the UK. They are doing the reviews on these as-built drawings for us. That's one of the firms that's doing the reviews on the as-built drawings. Because what we are looking at is we want to save the project. We want to do what we can to get the hospital open within the shortest possible time. But Tim, we cannot go and deliver a hospital that does not meet the basic standards. And people will tell me St. Jude's was always there. Yes, and that is what I tell them. If we had not made all of the changes that have been made with St. Jude, you had no problems with reopening the hospital. It is all the additions to the existing building. It is where the columns find themselves in the middle of the wards, in the alleyways. There's a step. The emergency. There are things, the amount of work. So here's the problem, Tim. In the preliminary estimates that we have there, is that it's going to most likely cost us another $100 million to complete St. Jude. Now think of this. The OKEU hospital cost us about $150 million. St. Jude, that is a refurbishment and some additions. If we go with that price, will cost us in excess of $200 million. And look at what we would have for the St. Jude hospital as compared to the OKEU hospital. Something went wrong somewhere.
But the hospital, will it be demolished?
We have no intentions of demolishing the hospital.
Now what is happening with...
And let me explain that. And that's what I'm telling you. No matter how many times the Prime Minister said it, and no matter how many times I said it, what did the Labour Party do? They go and march to say no demolition of St. Jude. But what is that about? St. Lucians are marching to say no demolition of St. Jude. But we said it. I told people what I was told by the Mexicans. And that's the problem, Tim. When you tell people what the truth is, they don't want to hear that. We want to hear what is convenient to us. So we don't want to believe that we spent all of that money and we spent it badly. And the Labour Party is trying to cover their tracks because it falls back on them. Now let me tell you what happened to me today. I got a call from a very interesting place in government. And they told me, you think you know what happened at St. Jude? You don't know anything. What you have touched there at St. Jude is the tip of the iceberg. And I will get the information, Tim. And when I get the information, the people of St. Lucia will know.
The George Odlum Stadium is in a dilapidated state. What will happen to that establishment?
It's worse than we thought, Tim. A lot worse. I had a team who went down there. We had met with the board and the union, and they had recommended that we spend $1 million at the George Odlum Stadium to do some remedial works for them. When we went down there, and the assessment that I saw, the preliminary assessment is in excess of $12 million to be spent on the George Odlum Stadium. The question is, do you go and spend that money on the George Odlum Stadium? The second question is, can you allow the people to remain? And I always say, hats off to the people of St. Jude for the service they continue to provide under these conditions. So we are in a difficult situation. That is the worst thing I have inherited in my life. That is the project that have given me the most difficulty to even try and figure a way out. And I've heard people say, oh, guy want to make money on this hospital. The easiest way to make money is to go and try and fix what is there. Because I can tell you, you can never price repairs. Because as you go along, you can add. If you decide to do a new building, to construct a new building, there's a fixed price you go in there. With the repairs to a building, and people repair their homes all the time. They repair things they have. Sometimes you take your car to the mechanic, you think that's the problem, you tell them fix that for you. And by the time you check it out, the price of fixing the car is 3 times what you imagine. So if Guy Joseph wanted to make money from St. Jude, I would have been working there every day like the Labour Party.
But when will you be able to tell St. Lucians, for example, what will be done with regard to improving the state of the George Odlum Stadium?
The matter relating to the George Odlum Stadium is being reviewed by a team from the ministry. The PS is heading this team, the permanent secretary in my ministry. They are the ones heading this team. They are in discussions with the Ministry of Health, with the board of St. Jude. So both in the case of St. Jude Hospital and the George Odlum Stadium, there's no holiday for us in this thing. So the rest of St. Lucia may be on holiday during the month of December. I'm hoping by January we can begin to make definitive. I was hoping that before December, I would have been able to make some definitive statements on St. Jude. But I'm hoping that by January, that we can make some definitive statements, and if work needs to recommence at St. Jude, once we have cleared the way as to how we are moving forward, that work can recommence. I could be doing things to make people believe we are doing something, you know, Tim. I could have people at St. Jude, if I wanted to quiet everybody in terms of what is going on there, we could pretend that we're doing a lot. Nobody would know. There's a lot of stuff that you can be doing at St. Jude. Even if you are not going to utilize it as a hospital in the final analysis. You could be clearing the area. You could be painting the walls. You could be finishing the electrical. There are lots of things you could be doing. And then everybody would say work is going on the hospital. Even if you have a completely different plan. I don't operate that way, team.
How soon will the OK EU hospital be opened?
You're asking me a question that's beyond me. Remember, the hospital is under my watch because the construction part of the hospital, because it is under the office of or the Ministry of Economic Development, which is what I inherited. The OK EU hospital, the challenge we have, and we know what is going on because this is open to the entire cabinet. We've been discussing these matters openly. The issue is we don't have the financing that it takes to commission the hospital at this point in time. Because the health budget would have to go up in excess of $55 million to just move VH over to the new hospital.
So why the government seem a little tardy in terms of addressing issues like universal health care?
We are not tardy, Tim. The amount of work we are doing, universal health care. I mean, look at the US. Let's use first world countries that use health insurance and they have health care. I mean, look at what happened with Obamacare. Look at what the new government came in and what they did. We did not inherit something with universal health care that we could go ahead with, you know. What the technocrats proposed to us was to increase NIC by 5%. So it would really be 2.5% on the employer and 2.5% on the employee. That would help raise about $40 million of the $55 million that is required to open the hospital. But it means that St. Lucians would still have to pay for the services at the hospital. And the position of this government is any money that is going to be raised should be raised to go towards a health insurance. And that health insurance will pay for the services so that we are looking at it. Let's say you can choose a basket of services or you can choose a cap on the required. So let's say we agree that we are going to consider health insurance up to the value of $100,000 for every St. Lucian. It means that if in February you use your $100,000 for the rest of the year, if you go to the hospital, you would have to pay your way through for the balance. There are a number of options we are looking at. Should we look at? I prefer a capping of a certain amount than a basket of services. Because if the sickness you end up with does not fall within the basket, even if you pay in insurance, you would not be covered. So my preference from a personal perspective and from the constituency that I represent, my preference is let us look at the health insurance up to a certain value so that I know whatever happens to somebody and they reach at the hospital, they will be covered up to that value.
But why are we still discussing that particular issue, even amidst all the challenges that we are facing? I mean, from the perspective of, for example, people continue to face high medical bills. A lot of people cannot pay the medical bills and meet their medical commitments and so on. And a large number of people are impacted by one ailment or the other. And this dates back to several decades now. And the previous Senatorial Labour Party started the process towards establishing universal health care. It was not completed by the previous United Workers' Party administration. The SLP came back. It was put on the back burner, and now the United Workers' Party is coming into office and facing this dilemma. So both sides have failed to address that particular issue to the point where it could be implemented.
So what did we inherit, Tim? What we inherited, you see, people need to define what they mean by universal health care. And ask anybody who was proposing that, what did universal health care entail? What did it include? What would still be the role of the government in the process? Because you can't really say that the government is the one providing universal health care. You know, how many people pay their hospital bills? How many people pay anything for the health center? Can the government sustain that indefinitely?
So why construct a new state-of-the-art health institution like OKEU? And now see, it suggests that there was poor planning on the part of the authorities. And now bellyache over the financing of the hospital, putting the necessary equipment and the staffing. Do you build a home and then later say that you cannot finance it? You cannot maintain it?
Tim, that happens to us all the time. I mean, but let me take Trinidad as an example. You know, Trinidad had a massive hospital built, fully equipped, that remained closed for years. Trinidad with oil and everything. Now that's no...
Trinidad can afford it. We can't.
No. That is no comfort to us. Healthcare is not easy and it is not cheap. So the burden of this, if you implement it, you're running a deficit. We are running a deficit budget. You increase the cost of healthcare, and I know when they tell you it's going to cost you 40 million, you can budget 80 million. Because the method of operations and what is happening there. So what we have said is, what can we do with OKEU for now? What we can do is all of the high-tech equipment that is sitting there not being used. And people still have to go for a CT scan and an MRI overseas when we have this equipment sitting there. So let us at least start the radiology department and some of the other services that are available there. Let us make it accessible to St. Lucians. Instead of them having to go to Barbados and Martinique and these places, get the dialysis unit going and all of that. And then later on we will project how we open the hospital, because here's the problem we have, Tim. VH has about 165 or 66 beds. And sometimes people are in the casualty waiting because they cannot get space. OKEU is 122 beds. That's 40 plus beds less. What is going to happen?
Who is responsible for this?
The government is responsible for this. But you have to understand how that came about.
But it does not make sense. If we have a growing population and the current institution that we have right now servicing the public is not sufficient in terms of the number of beds, why construct a new modern state-of-the-art health institution like the OKEU and have less beds?
Because there are two things that happen there. In order to proceed with the project, remember at the time the project was costed, things had changed considerably. The EU would not give any more money than that. So as a result, you had to make a determination. So the hospital was designed with 5 fingers. In order to get it to fit within the purse, the idea was to cut out 1 finger. which is why we ended up with less beds. Always with the intention that the government at some point in time would be able to add that additional finger and create the additional space. So we've looked at that and we are aware of the challenges. So when we met with the team working at the OKEU hospital to finalize things, we looked at connecting it to the wellness center, because there's a section of the wellness center on the upper floor that was not being utilized. And we looked at the possibility of fitting another 20 or 30 beds in there and create a walkway from the OKEU into there. That did not necessarily materialize as we would have anticipated because of construction challenges. And then you had to take into consideration the own limitations of the wellness center and its demand for its own space. So we have more challenges. You see, looking at the building there, that's just one part of the equation. But the problem is people don't want to. Why you think the Labour Party had a big ceremony to name the hospital? Shut down everything. Everybody went there. And that is what I'm saying to us as St. Lucians. We need to stop accepting these things. A big ceremony to name the hospital and it remained closed. And you know what worsened the whole situation, Tim? Apart, when they named the hospital, it means that they took over ownership of the hospital. So the defects liability period on the hospital ran out without anything being tested in the hospital. So everything is left on our account now. So if there are any defects in design, in the equipment, in anything that is there, the cost is to be borne by St. Lucia. And to further complicate it, the contractors have now taken the government to court and is suing the government for some 5 million euros or something like that, to say that there were obligations we should have met that we did not meet. All of that happened as a result of people trying to play politics with critical decisions.
When was the government taken to court on this issue?
Some of the documents came in while we were in government. As we inherited government here. But these things happened during the time that the hospital was being constructed and that the contractor said there were certain obligations that they had to meet with him and they didn't meet him.
How are you hoping this will be settled, in court or out of court?
The Attorney General is the one who usually advises us on this matter. We felt that, and a lot of things went wrong. And I need to say that, because even yesterday I was criticizing the Parliament for my approach towards the IFC. Some of these the international institution itself does not have a problem. But some of the people engaged in their business are suspect. So some of the people who are involved in the in the procurement, have been fined in their own countries because there was some collusion between the person supplying the persons doing the purchase and the suppliers. And then one of the main companies that was contracted to supply most of the equipment went into bankruptcy before they could supply the equipment. And I asked them, so isn't it the same EU people that approved it? And wasn't it the same EU companies that we were directed that these are the people we have to use? Now, when you've been given a gift, you have to go along with the terms and conditions of the gift. So I find myself in problems, Tim, because I don't hide these things. I come out and I tell the people of St. Lucia, this is what it is. This is what we have inherited.
You're watching Newsmaker Live. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll be taking your calls. My guest this evening, once again, is Mr. Guy Joseph, Minister with responsibility for economic development. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome back. We'll put the telephone number on screen right now so that you can call with your questions and your comments for my guest. Once again is Mr. Guy Joseph, Minister for Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport, and also Civil Aviation, and is also the MP for Castries Southeast. Now is the time to call if you have any question like you'd like to pose to the Minister. We have one of those calls on line. Hi, good evening. You're on the air. Hello? Okay, we lost that call, so we wait another call. So I will not pose another question to you just yet, Mr. Minister, because I'm sure that by the time I start posing a question, we'll be getting a call. Good evening. You're on the air?
Oh.
Hi, good evening to you, sir. You are on the air.
Oh, yeah. Let me turn on my radio, my TV a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I've been listening to all this debate on this hospital. But one of the things, I know once it comes to building design, usually the architects are in the forefront. But in this fiasco here, I have not heard the word architect mentioned more than 2 or 3 times. Architects usually are in the forefront. They more or less set the framework for this thing, for building design, whether it's a...
Hello? Okay, we have lost the caller. Hello? Okay, but go ahead. Caller, producer, let's cut the call and go ahead, Mr. Joseph. He's saying that he has not heard about the architects and the involvement.
Because what has happened, Tim, is the persons who presented the credentials for the design and supervision of the hospital were never the persons who did it. So a company with the requisite background in hospital construction and supervision presented all of the credentials on the HAL crew. But this is not the company that was engaged. A civil works company is what, not contractor, but supervising firm is what, or consultant is who ended up doing the stuff at the hospital.
I'd like to apologize to the first caller. The call dropped, so we have another call in line. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Mr. Guy, good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead with your contribution, as quick as possible, please.
Yeah. Mr. Guy, I understand that before, some time back, you said that the hospital was 75% finished, right?
No, I didn't say the hospital.
I heard you say it's 50%.
I don't recall ever saying the hospital was 75% complete.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, well, now, what we want to know, what we really want to know, when will we get our hospital? Because, look, we have Soufrière, Burndown. Now, people from Soufrière is going to St. Jude's. It's a shorter way from Soufrière to St. Jude's.
Yes.
So now, what will happen now? Because, you know, there's no bed there's no bed at the stadium. The doctors and everything, things are in a terrible state at the stadium. What are we going to do with St. Jude now?
Thank you so much for calling, sir.
Well, sir, there's no magic wand we can wave to fix the problem. It's unfortunate that this is where we are. But, Tim, this is a hospital, and there's no shortcut to fixing this problem that we have there. As most people say, work. But if you're working, you have to know what you're doing while you're working. You cannot just be working like a madman.
Yes, if you have another call. Good evening, you're on the air. Hi, good evening. Okay, we lost this call. But continue to call us. Once again, my guest this evening is Mr. Guy Joseph, the Minister with responsibility for economic development. Good evening, you're on the air?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, good evening to you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
I keep hearing that the universal healthcare started by the Labour Party.
Yes, caller.
And I remember Sir John.
You're listening to your television set, and it's distracting you, ma'am.
I remember Sir John is the one who started universal healthcare, which was situated upstairs where the statistics department was. Do you know that, Tim?
No, I'm not aware of that.
All
But
right.
but does it make a difference? Because no. Does it? But does it make a difference? Because we are still grappling with that issue.
And another government, you all keep saying that it started by one government and another government stopped it. It was started by the United Workers' Party. The office was upstairs, Streaky, on Miku Street. There were people like a lady called Miss Mins.
That's what year?
Worked in there.
That was what year?
I cannot remember what year. You as a journalist, do your homework and you will find out and find out. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. But it's the very first time I'm hearing about this anyway. But the fact remains, if it started under whichever government over several years or maybe over a decade ago now, by now we should have had it in place. We have another call. Good evening, you're on the air. Hello, good evening to you, caller. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I want to put a question to the minister.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir.
I'm a bus driver. I remember before you all came in power, your protest for gas. You say the hike of gas was so high.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, as you're coming, you all put a 150 tax on the gas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a bus driver, it's very hard on us. Because for the past 8 months, we have been making less money. And then we have to find more money to put gas in our buses. So it's a strain on us.
Mm-hmm.
And if you was a bus driver before, and if you had care about us, you will never, as a man, you will never allow your government to do something like that. And that really hurt me as a bus driver. And now, for the past 8 months, the money I'm making, the amount of money is very, very small, and all the money going in fuel. And up to now, no road, nothing is good. You also you're taking money for road. That's the same thing the party said when they power. They put money on the license and thing to fix road. You come back and with the same thing again. All the same gimmick you come back with again. And all the time we small one, we getting lower in money, and you're as minister, you're getting higher, and all the time you're
Can I say something to you,
yeah.
caller?
Yeah.
When you operated your bus and a gallon of fuel was $15.85. How much is a gallon of gas now? And what was and hold on, what was the bus fare when the gallon of gas was $15.85?
Yeah. That's what I'm telling you.
So hold on. But if you listen to what I said, when you operated your bus with the price of fuel at $15.85, there was no increase in bus fare. When we match against the price of fuel, the price of fuel came down by about $3 the following week. Then when we decided to introduce the 150, we capped the price of fuel at $12.75. And we said it's not going to go higher than that. If it goes higher than that, then we would have to make some adjustments. And presently, the government is not making 150 for the roads on the price of fuel because it would have taken us beyond the $12.75. So from a minibus perspective, you are much better with the price of fuel at $12.75 than it was at $15.85 when there were no increase in bus fares.
Yes, but you said it was, but you also that say it was a problem. You protest, and now as you come, you put it your price on one.
But we capped the the price did go up on the market. That is why we are not.
Finish already. If you want to say, I'll send you on the TV.
Okay, thank you so much for calling, sir. Appreciate. But, you're saying, Mr. Minister?
No, but I'm saying that we were very clear on what we did, that we were putting in the price on the fuel, and that it is for the road network. And if the caller is honest, he would say that we have seen a considerable amount of potholing work being done by the Ministry of Infrastructure on a lot of roads in St. Lucia as we speak. Because when I came in, the condition of roads in my constituency was very bad, and I must thank the Ministry of Infrastructure for the amount of work that they have done in alleviating some of the problems.
Final call on this program for 2017. Good evening, you're on the air.
Good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening to you, ma'am.
The next person I would like to see on your show, Timothy, is Dr. Kenny Anthony, to explain to us how he spent that amount of money and we the taxpayers, we are responsible for it, and St. George is not completed, number one. Number two, I've always been hearing about Grindberg. We St. Lucians need some explanation on that. Rochamel, we do need explanation on that to clear out the air, because you have Mr. Guy there tonight, clearing the air, even on the investigation they did on him. So at least we need to hear from Dr. Kenny Anthony as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for calling. Final comments from you, Mr. Joseph?
Tim, I just want to take the liberty from you for just a couple minutes to really thank the people of Castries Southeast in particular for the continued support that I get from the constituency. I want to take this opportunity very early to wish them all the best during the holiday season, to really make it a peaceful and enjoyable one that is free of any incidents of crime or anything of this nature, and that we would learn to live like brothers and sisters with each other, especially during this festive season. Whatever you do, don't overdo it. Now, these special greetings are going out to my constituents and to the people of St. Lucia in general. Because while I get a lot of criticism, Tim, everywhere that I go in St. Lucia, I get words of encouragement, of support, and I really thank the people, especially those people who pray for me every day. Because every time I meet somebody, they tell me, we are praying for you, we encourage you to be strong. I really appreciate that, Tim. I want to wish you and the staff of DBS all of the best. It's always a pleasure being here with you on this program, and I wish you and your family all the best for the new year.
Thank you so much, sir. All the best, and thank you so much for being on the broadcast today. And to you, the viewers, as always, thank you so much for taking time off to invite me into your homes, to be a part of this broadcast, and also to participate in it via your calls. Over the last 20 years, Newsmaker Live has been a staple every Wednesday. Unfortunately, I did venture off for about 4 years, but somehow I returned home, and it's certainly nice to be back. During the course of this year, we've had support from the callers, the viewers, the advertisers, and we say a very hearty thank you to you for making DBS Television #1 as well. My name is Timothy Polion, saying a very good evening to you, and see you sometime in January of 2018. Here's hoping that the season for you will be a splendid one that is free of any rancor and any violence, any bad blood, and we can continue to work towards the betterment of the people of St. Lucia. It's now time for the clip that peaked. Once again, that's the broadcast for this Wednesday. Thank you so much for watching. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the best for 2018. Good night, and see you next time.